Hey everyone, today I want to go through a game in the first American Chess Congress in the year 1857 between Louis Paulsen and Paul Morphy. Now we've all heard of Paul Morphy, the incredibly young and talented chess player from the 1800s, whose wizardry at the chessboard is just phenomenal. But we've never really heard of Louis Paulsen, but he's actually a German player. He played Alf Anderson in a World Championship match. In an 8-game match, it was actually a tie, so Anderson retained the title. But Paulsen is known as an incredibly good defensive player. And this was a very nice game played between two very strong players of the time. So in this game, Louis Paulsen was playing with the white pieces and Paul Morphy was playing with black, and we're going to look at it from the black perspective. So Paulsen began with the move e4, Morphy played e5, and we get into a 4 knights. Paulsen played knight to f3, Morphy defended, knight c3 is played, knight to f6, and then there was bishop b5 from white, and Morphy played bishop to c5. In this position there already are a few tricks on the board. For instance, white could play knight takes e5 if they wished, and black could recapture with knight takes e5. It looks though white may gain an advantage after d4, but actually black can play bishop d6, and after takes, bishop takes, this is actually still an equal position for both sides. Going back here, white could also play f4, and if black responds with knight c6, white can play e5, winning back the piece, but again after bishop to b4, black's fine after takes and queen takes. So if we go back to the main game after Morphy had just played bishop to c5, Paulsen wasn't really known for his risky moves. He just simply castled here, castled kingside. Morphy did the same, and now Paulsen did play knight takes e5, because Morphy has basically just sacrificed his centre pawn. And it's a sacrifice because if Morphy now makes the mistake of taking this knight, white gains an edge here with the move d4, and after bishop d6, white can play f4 this time. If the knight drops back to c6, white has e5, after bishop to e7, takes, and then d5. White attacks the knight on c6, and after knight to e7, white gains a small edge here with the move d6. And after capturing this pawn, white's a pawn down, but black's doubled their d-pawn, and white should be able to win this pawn back soon anyway. But the real point is that black's actually locked their bishop on c8 in, because the d7 pawn is absolutely abysmal in this position. So if we go back to the game after Paulsen has just taken on e5, Morphy didn't take, he played rook to e8 and developed his rook to an open file. Again though, white missed the advantage here for a small edge. Paulsen could have played just knight to f3. After takes, knight takes, rook takes, and d3. The rook retreats, white can play d4, and it forces the bishop go back to f8, and here white would have got a good, decent position. So after Morphy played rook to e8, Paulsen took the knight, knight takes c6 is played, d takes c6 is played, and the bishop retreated to c4. In the game, Morphy played b5 here, attacking the bishop. Knight g4 was also interesting though, threatening queen h4 here, because after white plays d4, black can play queen d6, threatening mate on h2. And if white defends, then black can just play bishop takes d4, just wins a pawn, and black's got an incredible nice position here. Okay, Morphy played b5 in the game. The bishop retreated to e2 to avoid this, and now Morphy regains his pawn with knight takes e4. White captured, the rook captured, and white played bishop to f3, hitting the rook and also c6 pawn at the same time. So Morphy retreats his rook back to defend c6. And to be honest here, Paulsen plays an absolutely terrible move, an abysmal move. Yeah, I can see his idea behind it, but it's really terrible. He plays c3 here. White's wanting to play the move d4, but what does c3 do? It removes the protection away from the square on d3, and this is just eye candy for Paul Morphy. He plays queen to d3, just locks down white's position entirely, and this queen is now just dominating the whole position. How is white supposed to get this bishop out on c1, or this rook on a1? So queen d3 is an incredibly nice move. Now if white wants to redeem themselves, they could have played rook to e1 here, but even so, after captures and captures, black still has moves like bishop to f5, dominating the white squares, sacrificing another pawn with bishop takes c6, But then after rook d8 from black, let's say queen e5, black can play queen c2, threatening queen d1 here. Bishop to e3 defends the d1 square. However, black can continue with bishop to d6, queen takes b5, and then play bishop to d3. After queen c6, black can play king to f8. The point is now black wants to play rook to e8 and rook to e1. And again, black's pieces here just lock out white's position. This bishop's terrible, and this rook is also terrible. So queen d3 was a very nice move by Morphy, and I feel like Paulsen's losing the advantage here already. He plays now b4, but this still looks very unusual. It attacks the bishop on c5, so Morphy drops his bishop backwards. Paulsen plays a4, prepares a5, which makes a lot of sense. So Morphy just captures this pawn, and white recaptures on a4. Now the best move for black here is probably just bishop to b7, because after rook to a2, the point is after rook a e8, the a6 square is covered by this bishop on b7. So for instance, after queen to d1, bishop a6, black's just absolutely winning this position, threatening queen takes f1 here. In the game, Morphy played bishop to d7. Now the problem with this move is that if Paulsen was awake here, he would have played queen to a6, removing the queen off the d3 square, and suddenly white's back in the game. But he didn't play this. White played rook to a2, and now Morphy just played rook a to e8. The point is now queen takes f1 is threatened, followed by rook to e1 with checkmate. And now Paulsen played queen to a6, a move later. So he had the right idea in the end. He's trying to trade the queens off on d3. Now it says here that Morphy took 12 minutes over his next move to assure himself that the combination he was about to make was sound, and it was a forced win in every variation. I thought this was an interesting comment because it actually says in Kasparov's book that Paulsen was a very slow player, and without a clock for either side, some games took up to 12 hours to play through. So in the grand scheme of things, 12 minutes doesn't seem a long time here. However, maybe you should pause the video now and see if you can find what Morphy played next. I'll give you about 5 seconds, I'll just pause the video. It's a very good move. So in this position, Morphy played the amazing queen takes bishop. And after white recaptured the queen, so Morphy's just sacrificed the whole queen here, but he has the reasons for it. He plays rook g6 check, only move is king h1, and now just plays bishop to h3. Attacking the rook on f1, but the plan here is just to play bishop to g2, followed by bishop to f3, with a discovered check against the king. In this position, rook d1 was played. If rook g1 was played instead, black has a simple mate of takes, king takes, and rook to e1 with check. The queen is the only piece that can block, and then rook takes f1 is checkmate. So in the game after rook to d1, Morphy now played bishop to g2 with check. The king went to g1. Bishop takes f3 was played with check. King f1 is the only move. And now Morphy actually missed a forced win. He could have played the quiet rook to g2 here, threatening to play rook takes f2. For instance, let's say queen d3 in this position, rook takes f2 with check can be played, king g1 is the only move, and after rook g2 check, king f1, then rook to g1 is checkmate, the bishop supports the rook and there's nowhere for the king to go. Similarly, if after rook g2, if white played king h1 here, rook g1 again is checkmate because the bishop protects the rook, and it's also check and check from the rook. So not the perfect game from Morphy, but black's still winning. He plays bishop to g2 with check instead. King g1 is the only move. Bishop to h3 was played with check. King h1 is the only move. And now Morphy played bishop takes f2, threatening bishop g2 checkmate. Queen f1 is the only way to stop checkmate. Giving back the queen basically, so Morphy takes, the rook takes, and Morphy just plays rook to e2. On a positional level, it doesn't look like white's doing too badly all of a sudden. However, black is still in control. After rook a1, Morphy played rook to h6, white played d4, attacking the rook with the bishop. But Morphy has it all figured out. There's just bishop to e3 and checkmate. Next move is threatened and there's no way for white to really stop this, and so Morphy won the game and white resigned. For instance, let's say bishop takes e3, there's rook takes h2 with check, king to g1, and then rook to g2 is checkmate. Rook to f2 is also worth a try for white, but after rook takes f2, bishop takes bishop. Black can still win the game with rook takes h2, king g1, and play rook to h1, because after king g2 there's rook takes a1, and black is in the driving seat. But that was a fabulous game by Paul Morphy, defeating a very strong player at the time, Paulsen. Hope you enjoyed the analysis and commentary. If you did, please do drop a like, comment or subscribe to support the channel, and I'll see you next time for another chess video.